It is now earned 2 monthly bonus on this. Shared among team members through the division of shares. Shares total bonus will be earned.
Okay. Hold on 1 second here. And somehow I have muted you all. So that is not helpful. Pardon me. And I somehow cannot unmute you guys. I apologize. Technology is so wonderful when it works and such a pain when it does not work. This is a new program and I apologize. We've had some trouble figuring out some of the settings. So, any moment now. There's still more people coming in. Okay, I'm still admitting folks. Okay. This is just silly. I cannot figure out how to unmute you guys. I should have just left it alone, but I was hearing background noise. So,
hello, Audrey. I'm in here. Lisa.
oh, thank you. Can you possibly see what I have hit?
Let's see.
I can't unmute Kristin and give her my screen.
Let's see.
I'm still able to let other folks in, but I cannot figure out. I muted because there was background noise coming in. But
Yeah.
I cannot unmute Kristin and give her the screen.
Yeah, it doesn't even give an option to unmute.
I know. That's what I was seeing, and I don't know how I managed that. I can still admit folks, so I must be okay, but I don't know what I have done.
Because when you mute all, that would include her. You still there? Yeah.
Oh, I'm there now.
There you are.
Kristin, can you possibly try to unmute yourself? That might be it.
Yeah. That's the only thing I can see that she'd have to.
Because I just unmuted myself after you muted me.
I'll admit your guess there.
This should be simpler. I apologize.
The great old go-to training.
Yes,
I like that one.
me too. Thank you all for your patience. I'm terribly sorry. Technical wizardry is not my forte, obviously.
Or mine either, apparently. uh,
I didn't have to type that. I could have spoken it. Sorry, Kristin.
so did she try that? Did she try?
She said she's not seeing it. It should be down like in the bottom part of your window. There's a phone. There are some dots, more actions. There's a screen share.
Tell her she probably has to put her cursor for it to appear.
Okay. And then you should see a purple microphone or some kind of microphone, hopefully, and it's probably got an X through it. And I am recording, so we're good on that score. However, we are not getting started. Thank you, Ellen. Good tip. I can see your messages. Yes, Kristin. Thank goodness that's working. Now,
Oh, she
she's
just
going
left.
to leave and she's going to try to come back in. So when she comes back in, if she clicks on share her screen, it should let her share her screen, right?
Well, you would think.
Okay. Oh, good grief. This is giving me a brain hemorrhage.
Or you might have to get her to do be the presenter.
Right, but I don't see a button that says make her a presenter anywhere. I was
She
looking.
might have to do that
Oh, okay.
on the side there, you know, where.
Can you just stay here until we get started just to make sure I'm not losing my mind? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, here she is again. Okay. I see you, Kristin. I hope you can hear me.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay,
Now.
well, thank you, Ellen, because when I came back in, there was an unmute button at the top of my screen.
Yay!
Yeah.
All right. And so if you click down at the bottom, can you share your screen out? There should be like a circle with a square in it with an arrow, and it says open share tray or something like that. Can you share your screen?
At the bottom.
I don't see how I can let you do that. Do you, Lisa?
She should be able to click on that share.
Okay. There should be like 4 buttons down at the bottom somewhere, 5 actually. A video, a microphone.
Yeah, I see it, but the desktop sharing, I get a pop-up saying it isn't supported in your browser yet. Meanwhile, the desktop app already has it, so why not give it a try? And it wants me to download it. But your email said to use Chrome browser.
I would go ahead and try it. It should be fine. Don't you think, Lisa?
Yeah.
We haven't had too many troubles at all with the browsers with this program. Skype for Business, yes, but not this one. I apologize, folks. Thank you for your patience. Uh-oh.
Oh, she left the conversation.
This is crazy. Should be able to,
Did she come back yet?
no, that was Elise. Okay, folks, we're temporarily having a technical glitch here. I'm trying to think, how could I open that for her? I guess she could send it to me and I could do it.
Oh, this is that.
Oh, give control. I see give control. It says only to you, though.
Yeah, because she isn't back yet, is she?
I don't think so.
She had left. There she is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not allowing me to share my screen unless I download that Teams app, and I don't have access to that because we don't have that on the HDI platform. I think that's something CanScribe has.
Okay. So, what should I do? Would
So
you like?
do you have, Kristin, a PowerPoint presentation or something? Is that?
Yes.
I do, yes.
The only thing I can see is, Audrey, she'll have to send that to you and you show your screen and you can just flip,
Right.
you know, she can talk and you can click.
Is that okay, Kristin?
Yeah, if you want to do that, I can email that to you. And
You want to do it in a PDF that might be smaller to get me right away?
yeah, let me try to convert it. Are you going to be okay going past hours since we're starting late, or do we need to reschedule for another date?
No, we'll just go over. That's fine. If that's okay with you.
Okay.
It's our fault, so. Sorry about that, folks.
Do you still need me, Audrey, or?
I think I'm okay. I'm sorry about it.
Oh, okay. It happens when you're dealing with
Technology.
that's right. So.
I'm sorry, Kristin.
That's okay.
Let me just open my email quick and grab it.
I haven't sent it just yet. I'm waiting for it to.
Okay, just tell me when. And while we're waiting, folks, thank you for being so patient. We're coming to you from the
Okay, here we go.
beautiful Northwest. Okay, hold on here. Let me see if I got it yet. Okay. And I see somebody else is waiting. Hold on here. Okay.
Okay, I sent it to your CanScribe email.
Okay. Any moment now. There we go, maybe. There we go. All right. Okay. Can you folks maybe see that, or have I not shared my screen enough?
I see it.
Okay, awesome. Alrighty, so to start again, good morning and welcome to everybody. Sorry about the delay. Technology is not all it's cracked up to be sometimes. Thank you again, Kristin, for your patience. Kristin Wall, if you folks don't know, is a CHDS and a CHDS and an AHDI fellow. She is also the senior programs coordinator and editor-in-chief of Plexus magazine for AHDI. AHDI is, of course, the group that pretty much governs the MT-HDS industry worldwide. I don't really know of any other organization that supports us, so I do encourage you folks to find out all you can about that. Even in Canada, I do think it's very important that we all participate. Kristin has co-authored the CMT exam guide, a walk through the blueprint and quality medical editing for healthcare documentation specialists. I actually have this book and I've used it in teaching. I love it. It has some really, really great exercises in it. You can purchase it. You can find it on Amazon, but I just loved it. And it came with voice files that you could practice with as well. She's been a freelance copy editor for numerous medical transcription and style-related texts, as well as fiction books, having a meticulous eye for detail. Kristin has over 20 years experience in the healthcare documentation field. She enjoys mentoring and paying it forward, and I can attest to that on every level. She's been a speaker at a variety of local, state, and national AHDI conferences and credentialing study groups, as well as being kind enough to do many webinars for us. So with that said, please go ahead, Kristin. Welcome.
Thank you, Audrey. I'm so happy to be here with y'all today. I definitely have had tech issues in the past myself, so I know what it's like when you're trying to get used to some new software. Platforms, yeah, we've been investigating that a lot. But okay, so happy Halloween, everybody. It may be a little bit too late this year, but if you're thinking about what costume to wear for Halloween next year, you could consider being a registered healthcare documentation specialist. Okay, so that was kind of a cheesy joke, but in all seriousness, I do appreciate you having me here today to speak to you about credentialing, and we will touch a little bit about HDI too, which, as Audrey mentioned, is the professional association that represents medical transcriptionists and healthcare documentation specialists. So as Audrey's showing there, today we're going to touch on these items here: importance of credentialing, benefits, exam development and oversight, renaming the credentials. Just want to give you a brief background history on some of that. We'll go over the exam blueprints. Audrey has asked me to touch a little bit on the CHDS exam also, so I have a few slides on that. And of course, the candidate guide, which gives a wealth of information, exam day guidelines, and then there will be some focus on tips, common mistakes, and examples based on the exam blueprints. I will touch a little bit too on exam resources, cost, and how to sign up for an exam if you're ready to take that next step. And then, of course, at the end, we want to leave some time. Audrey, if I'm getting close to time, feel free to jump in. I do have several slides, and I'm going to try to go through them a little bit quickly, but certainly during the Q&A, if I haven't explained something or I went a little bit too quickly and you want me to backtrack and expand a little bit, just definitely let me know.
Okay.
Okay, next slide. Oh, no, sorry. I'm looking at two different screens.
Sorry.
Trying to coordinate. No, it's fine. I just wanted to make sure I'm synced up with you. Okay, so why get credentialed? Certification in healthcare documentation is a very important step to finishing off your education because it makes a huge difference to the patients whose care depends on your precise documentation. It is important to employers who must hire highly qualified and trusted healthcare documentation specialists, and it's important to you for the satisfaction of attaining certification. Those four little letters after your name will make a powerful statement about the expertise that you bring to the table and is a measurable way to help ensure that only skilled, qualified, and accountable individuals have access to patient records for the purpose of creating, modifying, and formatting the clinical care record. Promoting a credentialing requirement for the profession helps send a clear message with healthcare delivery that healthcare documentation specialists have met the minimum standards to engage in a risk management role. Having credentialed workers also helps organizations and the entire profession as a whole because of reasons such as what is stated on the screen there. The interpretive nature and application of informed judgment, as well as the ability for HDSs to amend and modify the record, makes it critical that the industry have benchmarks and standards to assess job readiness and reliability and risk management. This is, for example, why we published the Book of Style. Healthcare places a high value on degrees, credentials, and professional designations. Credentials tell healthcare delivery professionals that HDSs are a real, quote-unquote, allied health profession with an accountable scope of practice. And recent changes in HIPAA requirements with the HITECH Act and so on make it important for our sector to demonstrate training and certification in HIPAA compliance. I'm sure you're learning about that in your school. Industry employers are also moving toward preferential hiring practices for credentialed professionals. I'll touch on it a little bit more, but we do have many companies that we know of who already have or are in the process of moving their workforce to be 100% fully credentialed. And they are assisting with that in some ways. So we'll get to more of that later. And then new graduates with an RHDS credential are more likely to get a foot in the door with industry employers, and also seasoned HDSs who possess the CHDS credential historically have made higher salaries than their non-credentialed colleagues. Next slide.
Any second now. There we go.
Okay. So here are just a few of the benefits to holding a credential. Having more self-confidence, taking pride in your work, standing out against the crowd as a job applicant or as an employee who's willing to diversify their skill set, learn new account specialties, or be considered for a promotion or a pay raise. It also shows that you're committed to your work in your chosen field. It can help you be seen as a professional and valued member of the healthcare team, shown respect. Again, it demonstrates training in HIPAA compliance, provides opportunities for you to earn better wages. And of course, another benefit is simply that you gain knowledge. There's a lot of continuing education opportunities that take place when you're credentialed. And sometimes it's just that extra reminder to go out and actually seek those opportunities to expand your horizons. Next slide.
Was that the right one?
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so I just want to touch briefly in the next couple of slides on the background of how and who developed our exams. Our credentialing exams were developed with Certification Management Services, or CMS, as which is an independent test development and psychometric analysis consulting company. They do this for many different companies and organizations, so it's their niche, it's what they do. And then our exams are delivered by Criterion, which is a full-service test development and delivery company that provides world-class online testing technology. They are the market leader in online proctoring, which is a new thing for us in the last few years. Next slide. Okay, and then the Credentialing Commission for Healthcare Documentation is a group of people from HDI, from the industry, who are considered industry content experts. They may be educators, they may be managers, supervisors, but they come together and serve on a committee for AHDI that is the Credentialing Commission. They do help with writing exam questions, providing job-related perspectives. When we developed our new blueprints, they developed those objectives for each RHDS and CHDS exams. And then they also, in an ongoing fashion, maintain responsibility for determining exam content, test specifications, and so forth. Any issues that come up with the exams or any changes that come about in the industry, or any questions or discrepancies that we get from exam takers, or those simply who are studying it that have questions about things, can be taken to the Credentialing Commission, and then decisions made. For example, we've had a few topics related to continuing education credit topics that over time have become more relevant than they used to be. HDSs have expanded their knowledge base, and we're seeing that branch out into other roles, doing analysis and abstracting and some other things, scribing. So those are some of the topics that may be brought to the Commission for discussion and consideration of being added to our to being allowed as credentialing, as credit-worthy items for recredentialing. Okay, next slide. Okay, again, I'm just going to briefly touch on this, but it's been several years ago now. Back in October of 2013, our exams were renamed to RHDS and CHDS. This came on the heels of us transitioning from RMT and CMT, which of course are registered and certified medical transcriptionists, to registered and certified healthcare documentation specialists. We adopted the title of healthcare documentation specialist as opposed to medical transcription because it was felt after long discussions with many in our industry, with our board of directors, and with our membership at large, that because of the changes going on in this industry and again the scope of the job roles that we were seeing coming about, it was felt that healthcare documentation specialist was simply a broader term that encompassed more of those roles rather than being sort of limited to just being a medical transcriptionist. Because of course now people are called editors, speech rec editors, medical language specialists. There's many different titles. Okay, so we did rename those, and then the only thing super significant about this is that I just want you to be aware that some of our exam prep materials do still have RMT or CMT on them, but they are RHDS and CHDS ready. The content did not change. We simply changed the names. And of course, once we revise our exams, all of that will be updated as well. Okay, next slide. Credentialing exam overview. Okay, so this just basically lets you know that these are voluntary credentials. As I mentioned earlier, we see more and more employers who are requiring people to be credentialed in order to work for them. They are implementing programs that help their workforce become credentialed so that they can then retain those employees. And then many of them also give some different benefits, which we're going to go over here in a little bit too. But we do have 3 exam options. Of course, the RHDS, which is the level 1 exam, the more basic one, the one that you all will want to take once you complete your program. The CHDS exam is level 2, which is a more advanced exam. We highly recommend having at least 2 years of acute care experience under your belt before taking that test, because it is much harder, and you do really need to be exposed to a lot more terminology, a lot more surgeries, and a multitude of specialties than typically what is tested for on the RHDS exam. And then the Credential Qualifying Exam, or CQE as we refer to it, is simply a combination exam. It's a combination of both the level 1 and the 2. You would take the RHDS exam first, and then if you pass that, you can move on and take the CHDS exam. And then if you pass that, you would be a CHDS. The CHDS always trumps the RHDS, but this just was an option that we wanted to put out so that those who had been in the transcription field for many years and who already did have that 2 years or more of acute care experience in multiple specialties, it allowed them to be able to take the RHDS exam and then the CHDS exam in one sitting, because the RHDS exam is a prerequisite in order to take the CHDS. So you can't go straight to taking the CHDS even if you've got 20 years experience. You either have to take the RHDS exam and pass it to move on to the CHDS, or you need to take the Credential Qualifying Exam in order to get that RHDS and then move on to the CHDS. I hope that makes sense. Next. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that we offer online proctoring, online proctored exams now. So there's 2 ways that you can take the RHDS or CHDS exam. The first is via online proctor, and a proctor is simply somebody who monitors those taking an exam via a webcam. In this setting, you would take the exam from your home or office computer, and you would then be monitored by a proctor via webcam. You can see there are several reminders on screen here of sort of the do's and don'ts of those types of things. There are specifications in the Credentialing Candidate Guide, so you're going to want to read through and make sure that you're familiar with all of those things. But these are some reminders. You know, they're basic, you know, things that you want to do. A couple of things that I definitely want to point out when taking the online proctor exam, and this is just to sort of head off any issues that may come up, because we've had these issues happen, so we've had people learn. It is necessary to have an external webcam on your computer. This is so that the camera can be set at a 45-degree angle to capture both your head and your hands while they're on the keyboard. And the proctor has to be able to, you have to be able to turn the webcam around and sort of scan the room in case the proctor asks you to do that. And that's simply to make sure that there's nobody else in the room with you, to make sure that you don't have notes laying out that you could potentially look at, and that sort of thing. We've had, I apologize for my dog barking in the background, if you can hear that. But as I was saying, you definitely want to make sure, as you can see on the screen there, to pay attention where your eyes are looking and to not move your mouth. We have had situations in which people were sort of staring off at the wall, you know, so that kind of was making the proctor think that maybe they'd, put notes up on the wall or something, references, whatever. Or we've also had situations where, sometimes people, when they're thinking to themselves or concentrating, they start, kind of mouthing or reading along what they see on the screen. So the proctor does not have audio. This is webcam only, but it is not audio. So all they see is your mouth moving. They don't know if you're talking to somebody else in the room or whatnot. So, if you're somebody who sort of does that, you might want to practice not doing it because that proctor could stop your exam and ask you to take your camera and scan the room and whatnot. So just a few tips there to help you get through that process a little bit easier. But there is a lot of information, again, in the candidate guide, so make sure that you read that fully. Okay, next. Okay, so if you're going to an on-site test, which again, you've got the option to do the online proctored, or you can go to an on-site testing center. If you don't want to have those potential issues, if you are somebody who likes to mouth the questions, or if you stare off into space, or whatever the case may be, you can always have the option of going to a test center. You would just be monitored in person in that case. It's a typical testing center generally where they've got rows of computers set up in little cubicles. They'll, have you sit down, and they'll basically, you put all of your stuff into a cubby or into a locker, and you're not allowed to take anything with you into the testing center. You do not, of course, you want to take your photo ID, which you also actually will need that for the online proctored exam too. You will have to show that to the camera so that they can verify your identity and make sure that you are indeed the right person who's supposed to be taking the exam. But when you go to a testing center, you are not allowed to take your own keyboard, mouse, foot pedal, chair, papers, all of those types of things. You don't need to take any reference books because you're not allowed to use those. So if you are somebody who has an ergonomic keyboard, for example, and that is your preference, that may be a reason that you want to choose to do the online proctored exam versus going to a site, because you won't be able to take your keyboard with you. I actually did that years ago when I took my first CMT test. I was not used to typing on a regular keyboard, and I struggled through that test so bad because it felt completely awkward. So if that's an issue for you, either practice with the regular keyboard again, or make sure that you take your take the online proctored so that you can use your own keyboard at home. Special accommodations that may be needed. All facilities have exceptions and allow things that they allow for that. So feel free to check with the testing center if those are any concerns that you have, if you need the screen enlargement or anything like that. And then, of course, make sure that you arrive with plenty of time to get situated ahead of time, put your stuff in the locker, and maybe sort of sit and chill out for a minute before your test begins. Next. Okay, so these are the steps for signing up for an exam. You can go to the AHDI website. I've put in the direct link there for you. On the home page, you can also just go under certification and then down, and you'll see where it says there are different buttons for RHDS and CHDS. So just click on the RHDS. There also is a resource page that has tons of information and other resources listed. So you'll definitely want to check that out. You will need to submit an eligibility form, and then there's typically, unless we're running a special, there's a $10 eligibility fee to take your exam. Once you receive your authorization to test letter, All of the instructions will be provided on that letter. It's going to direct you to go to the Web Assessor website, which is Criterion's website. That is the platform that is used to take your exam. It's going to walk you through how to schedule your exam. You'll pay for it, all of that type of stuff. Again, this is where you're going to capture your photo ID so that they have that on record. And then also on the day of your exam, you're going to show your ID again. That's where they're going to compare and verify that it's really you. Tech requirements, all of those sorts of things, again, are provided. I've provided the links here for that prep page that I told you about on the AHDI website. And then also we offer a practice exam, which I think I have this in a slide a little bit later to talk about more too, but it's basically a practice exam of very, very similar to what the real exam is going to look like. It is taken within the Web Assessor platform. It's not proctored, so you don't need to set up a webcam for the practice exam, but it is in the same platform online, so you would have the same exact experience as far as seeing the questions, clicking on the answers, doing the audio questions, clicking on audio, transcribing. All of that would be the same exact experience as taking a live real exam. Next slide. Okay, I'm not going to take too much time to go over this. I already touched on a lot of these things briefly earlier, but this is just sort of outlining the criteria of who's eligible to take the RHDS. Audrey can certainly provide you with the PDF afterwards, so feel free to read through those a little bit more closely on your own later.
And it will be posted up with webinar.
Okay. Okay, so the RHDS exam format, it is going to be 130 questions. You are allowed 3 hours to take your exam. Not everybody needs 3 hours, but you are allowed 3 hours in order to finish. There are two parts. The cognitive assessment, which is the multiple choice questions. And then the second half of the exam is transcription against audio. So you will go through that full set of multiple choice questions first, and then once you're done with that section, you can move on to the second section there, which is the transcription against audio. Next. Okay, so the styles and standards that are found on the exam I've listed several examples here related to, types of medical records, formats, turnaround times, grammar, usage, capitalization, plurals, abbreviations, numbers. These are all the types of things that you're going to be tested on the RHDS exam. All of this information is based on the Book of Style 3rd edition. So you're definitely going to want to have that on hand. I know that CanScribe uses that in their curriculum, so you're probably already familiar with it, but those are, definite concepts that you're going to want to know for that RHDS exam. Next. Okay, this just kind of outlines some of the clinical medicine questions that are going to be included. I think I've got one more slide coming up that'll show those a little bit more. But basically for the clinical medicine, you're going to be tested on anything from anatomy to disease processes. Questions may include lab references, BUN and creatinine. You're going to have to know ranges, typical ranges for those labs. You're going to have to know various diagnostic studies, x-rays, CT scan versus PET scan, those types of things. And then treatment options. And again, because the RHDS is the more basic level 1 exam, it's not going to include, you know, in-depth surgical reports or content related to that. It's going to be more of the types of things that you're tested on in your school program. Very similar. Okay, next. Okay, the last section that they test on with the RHDS exam is health information technology. So questions related to computers, basic terminology related to computers, and then healthcare abbreviations, transcription technology, all of those sorts of things are going to be included as well. And as a side note, in the candidate guide, we do also have some sample questions at the end of each of those sections. So if you're not sure what types of things are going to be on it, you can definitely check those out in the candidate guide, which is a free download. It's, I think, 45 or 50 pages, but it's just a free download PDF from our website that you can scan through and see those types of things. We'll talk more about resources later, but we have some other examples coming up too. Next. Okay, this is just sort of the different clinical medicine specialties listed out that are covered on the RHDS. So, you know, this is just basically showing you the full range of, you know, questions that you may get, everything from psychiatry to GI to infectious disease to pediatrics. And again, it's going to be, you know, at the appropriate level for somebody who is a postgraduate. It's not going to be, you know, super advanced questions like what is going to be on the CHDS test.
Okay.
Next. Okay, so Audrey had asked me to include some information about the CHDS exam and its blueprints. So I'm just going to touch on those briefly here, and we'll see a couple of exam question examples coming up in a bit too. If you see, there's a little bit difference in the font for these slides. I kind of left that on purpose so that the CHDS slides would stand out against the RHDS information. So when you're taking a CHDS exam, again, it's level 2. Highly, highly recommended that you've got at least 2 years of experience doing acute care transcription in multiple specialties. And that's really going to give you the foundation that you're going to need in order to succeed on this exam. This exam has 120 questions compared to the RHDS, which had 130. And what you're tested on this exam is multiple choice, transcription against the audio. And then the third thing is SRT editing against the audio. And I do have an example of what that looks like coming up. Again, the content's focused on clinical medicine, health information technology. It's not going to ask the more basic questions. It's not going to test you on, you know, reference ranges for lab results, you know, like WCs and, you know, things like that. You're not going to have to know those types of, well, you're not going to get quite, you still have to know that information because you will have to have, you know, taken that RHDS test, and those concepts still need to be applied to your CHDS exam, but you're not going to be specifically asked those types of questions because that would have already been covered on the RHDS exam. So the CHDS is strictly covering the more advanced topics in clinical medicine, in healthcare information technology, and speech rec editing, and that sort of thing. Again, you're allowed 3 hours to take this exam. On both the RHDS and the CHDS exams, you do have the ability within the web assessor platform to mark questions for review. If you're looking at a question and you're just really on the fence about which answer is correct, first of all, I recommend choosing an answer because you don't ever want to leave it blank. you do want to choose an answer, but you can also mark it to be reviewed later. So if you have extra time at the end of your test, you can go back and review those. I say to not, why I'm saying to definitely make sure that you click an answer is because that at least gives you a chance at getting the correct answer. If you don't choose any answer for that question, you're automatically going to be counted wrong if there's, you know, no answer selected. So at least if you pick something, even if you're not 100% sure if it's right, that at least is giving you a chance. So, and that's just in case, you know, you don't end up having time at the end of your test to go back and review. Like I said, most people do have time at the end of their test to go back and review, should they want to. But, you know, if you're, you know, one of those type of people that needs a little bit longer or takes a little bit longer on your tests, and, you know, you want to take your time and not be too rushed, you may not end up having as much time at the end of your test to get through all of those things that you mark for those questions for review. And be a little bit selective about which questions you do mark for review. If you're pretty sure your answer is correct, you may not want to, you know, mark it for review, because, you know, if you're marking every other question for review, when you get to the end, if you've got, you know, 20 minutes left, you may not be able to make it through, you know, 60, 70 questions. So definitely be selective with that. And then you will get your results immediately. Once you submit your test, that pass or fail is going to show up right on your screen. It's going to automatically be graded. Next. Okay, so when you start this process, these seem like pretty basic, you know, tips, but you definitely want to spend some time preparing for your test. Make sure that you're reviewing the exam blueprint for the exam that you're taking. Focus your study and preparation on areas that you can identify as having weaknesses in or gaps in knowledge or experience. If you're, you know, and I don't know this, but if your school very thoroughly covered GI and GU, but maybe they didn't go as in depth on OBGYN or psychiatry or, you know, rheumatology or something like that, you might want to spend a little bit of extra time going through your book and making sure that your knowledge, that you're filling in the gaps of knowledge on those specialties that you just aren't as familiar with. Then, of course, you're going to want to seek your eligibility, all of those steps that I mentioned in that previous slide. Make sure that you're following all of the instructions very closely. I'll give some more tips about the actual exam instructions and such later. And then, again, I recommend taking that credentialing practice test. That's the one that is in the same web assessor platform. It is not proctored, but it is going to give you the same exam experience as taking the live test. And you're going to get feedback on, you know, maybe some of those that you missed. So it's definitely worth taking, in my opinion. And if you have any questions or are confused about any of the steps, certainly don't hesitate to contact us at HDI. I have my contact information at the end of the presentation too, so you'll all have that. Next. Okay, what's allowed? So as far as equipment, as I mentioned earlier, there's the do's and don'ts of whether you're taking an online proctored test versus going to a testing site. So make sure that you're familiar with the equipment do's and don'ts. If you are taking an online proctored exam, don't use a wireless connection. They can be very spotty, even if you don't think it, or you don't always notice when your connection goes up and down, because sometimes it is super quick, and you may not have alerts on your computer turned on for that, so you may not know. But if that connection drops, that's going to boot you out of your exam. And that's going to be on you. You're not going to be allowed back into the exam because your internet went down. So definitely make sure that you're using a hardwired line and that it's reliable. They do allow beverages, you know, some water, something to be in a clear container on your desk. There are allowances, you know, if you're diabetic or something like that, there are allowances for breaks and, you know, snacks and whatever if you need to take it, but there's protocols for that as well as far as notifying your proctor that you need to take a break. And there are certain, you know, times that you're allowed to do that in between, you know, the first half and the second half of your exam. Most people, you know, have no problem sitting. I mean, when you're working on the job, most people sit for several hours a day without getting up to take a break. But if that is something that you need or feel you may need, definitely look at the information that's in the candidate guide, and then also contact the criterion and ask them about those specific questions. As I mentioned earlier, no reference materials are able to be used on the exam, so you're going to have to completely clear your desk. And again, if the proctor asks you to scan, you know, your desk or scan around the room, you're going to need to take your camera in and switch that around. If you're, you know, taking a test at an in person at a testing center, you're not going to have to deal with any of that, of course. Next. Okay, I have mentioned the candidate guide several times here, but all of these things listed are included in the candidate guide. It's really a wealth of information, and if you haven't already looked at it, definitely read through it. Like I said, it's you know, several pages, although that content does include CHDS information as well as CQE information, so it's not all just focused on the RHDS, but tons of information there that you'll want to read through. It's going to answer a lot of your questions. Next. Okay, so now we're getting into some of the tips for success, and I have several slides on this. Make sure that you know and understand the RHDS blueprint. We have a lot of information about this. You can download the objectives. We offer the RHDS guide, which is a fantastic little workbook. It actually goes through and explains every objective that's given on the RHDS exam, and it provides sample questions, it provides explanation, it provides extra resources that you can content, so it's really a valuable resource. When you purchase that, it also comes with the CD-ROM, and that has practice transcription. It's also matched with the objectives. It provides information about that, and then it gives practice snippets of dictation that you would transcribe and be graded on right there, and it'll let you know if your answers are wrong or right. And there are some allowances in that are able to be done more than one way. Next.
Oops, did I not? No, there.
Okay, this is a pretty important slide, I feel, because I am the person on the AHDI staff who reviews exams when people fail them 2 times or more and wants some feedback. You can request feedback on your exam if you have failed it twice. But these are tips that I tell everybody prior to taking their exam, because these are the exact types of things that I see people doing and what helps contribute to them failing their tests. So do not include words or phrases that are already provided. This is in the transcription against the audio section. This, of course, isn't multiple choice is multiple choice. You're only going to be able to select one answer for each of those. But as far as the transcription against the audio, if it has, an example would be, okay, the patient is a 24-year-old male with a history of blank disease, and there will literally be a little line for the blank. And what's dictated that you need to fill in is peripheral vascular. So in that, again, what you're going to hear dictated is the patient is a 24-year-old male with a history of blank disease or of peripheral vascular disease. So the only thing you're going to be looking for is the word of and then disease, and you're going to fill in what's in between there that's being dictated but not seen on your screen. So peripheral vascular are the two words that you're going to want to transcribe, and you just transcribe it together. It gives you a blank field, a little text field in which to type that. So you just type in peripheral vascular, and make sure that you spell it correctly, and don't add any extra spaces, don't add a period or anything of that nature to it. What's missing is the only thing you want to transcribe. Do not add commas or periods. These have all been provided for you. Again, if a blank comes at the end of the sentence, there's going to be a period that's provided for you. That is not something you're going to have to transcribe. And I know that when you're transcribing sentences, it is very, common. I mean, you're so used to putting a period at the end of a sentence, but it's already going to be there for you. So resist putting the period in. If you do type it, make sure that you backspace and remove it, because if that period is left in, that answer is going to be counted wrong, even if the answer that you typed in is correct. And that, unfortunately, is just the way that the software is built. It's comparing your answer to what we have provided them in an answer key. So if they are not exact matches, it's going to count it wrong. Okay, do not include spaces. Do not tab, do not indent, do not use any other hidden characters at the end of your response. We already talked about that. You do want to include hyphens, percents, percent signs, virgules, and other symbols if they should be included. So if there is something that is talking about, the patient has 50% disability, it is perfectly fine to transcribe a percent sign. That is not the same as punctuation. The virgule, if there's an instance where you need to use, they say the patient has 4 out of 5 pain, and that should be transcribed 4/5. You definitely want to use the virgule in that type of a situation. If there is an instance where they are saying specific gravity is 1030, you would type the decimal point in that, which obviously is a period, so it is allowed, but we're just saying not to use a period at the end of a sentence or commas in between sentences. So again, just looking for what those blanks are and filling in the information that's given. Okay, and then do capitalize the first word of your response if it is the first word in the sentence. So that's typical, sentence case. You typically begin sentences with a capital letter, so you would do that as normal. If, of course, a blank is in the middle of the sentence and it is not a brand name or some other reason why it should be capitalized, you would just use regular sentence case for that instance. Next. Okay, so here's just another quick example, well, a couple of examples. I sort of went over the specific gravity one already. The other one is just indicating that on the audio you would hear the patient's medications include Xanax 0.25 milligrams every 6 hours is needed. On the screen, this is just showing you what you'll see where it shows that blank, and every 6 hours is needed. So you literally would only type in Xanax using a capital X because it is a brand name, 0.025 milligrams. Should they dictate Xanax 0.25 milligrams, you should know, either based on your instructors telling you, training you, or from using the Book of Style, that a 0 always is used before a decimal point when that number is less than 1. So that should be something you're already familiar with, but again, you want to follow the transcription rules. So, okay. RHDS. Okay, so these are just some more examples of objectives that are found on the RHDS exam. Objective 1.21 says that right there. So I've given a few examples here of singular versus plural, some good examples of common mistakes that people make. Make sure that if they're referring to, if you're positive that they're referring to, both feet, you put in feet rather than left foot or right foot. That should be fairly evident by the use of left or right if it's only pertaining to one. But, some of those words that, are used as plurals commonly, adnexa is one, for example. You want to make sure and use those appropriately and transcribe those appropriately. So here's just a couple more examples of objectives, and then things to sort of watch out for. Those are certainly not every single thing that you need to know for that particular objective, but it gives you a good idea of some of the types of things that are going to be found related to that objective. Next. Okay, so here is a CHDS example, and Audrey, if we're getting close on time and you need me to hurry up, I can skip these next few slides or go back to them at the end.
Okay. Should we? Do you want to?
It's completely up to you.
Why don't we? And you folks can always review these, of course, on the PDF that will be posted up. Okay.
Right, and certainly email me if you have any questions about them. The only reason I was going to just mention of why these are examples of CHDS exam questions is simply the level of difficulty, being that they're related to a surgery. As I mentioned earlier, you're not going to find surgery questions on the RHDS exam. So as far as format, the multiple choice and whatnot, that's going to be the same on the RHDS. It's simply, these examples are simply just level 2 because of the difficulty level.
Right.
Okay, so a few more tips for success. I suggest to everybody to make sure that you read that Book of Style cover to cover, know it really well. I'm sure CanScribe does a great job, teaching it. That is what the exam, especially the RHDS exam is based on. So, examples, style, standards are all going to be covered in there. You may know that Malampati-Samsoon is a classification system that's used by anesthesiologists to assess the airway for level of difficulty in intubation. So if that were a question on the exam, but that's not going to help you if you misspell it. So if you're familiar with that term and that it's what that classification system is for, that's fantastic. But if you spell it, you're still going to get it wrong. So know how to spell it too. What it's for and how to spell it. And also capitalization, yes. Capitalization. So same thing with the example I gave earlier about specific gravity, 1030. That's commonly dictated that way, 1030, 1025, 1020. But you need to transcribe that decimal in the appropriate spot or it will be counted wrong. Okay, common mistakes, misspelled words, both medical and English, believe it or not. If you're not a good speller, make sure that you practice. Practice without using a word expander because we sometimes rely very heavily on word expanders. You can, you know, put those long words in there, sternocleidomastoid muscle, and not have to think about it twice. You just put in SCM or whatever your brief abbreviation is for that, and it expands it for you. But on the exam, you're not going to be able to use your word expander, so you do know how to. You do need to know how to spell correctly. Missing or wrong words. So listen very carefully to the dictation. There's different accents that you're going to encounter, just like in your practice transcription at school. There's going to be different accents. There's going to be, mumbled speak, background noise. There's a variety of things in there. And we're not trying to throw you off, but we're trying to simulate a real life, equivalent experience and test against that. If we, cleaned it up and had no background noise and perfectly clear speaking people dictate, then that's not going to simulate a real life experience for you. Hyphenation issues, tons of hyphenation. Sorry, I'm just gonna.
No, I'm fine. Go.
Yeah, these are something, and believe me, I know it can be frustrating to because a lot of these things don't make a hill of beans in a real world situation. If a hyphen is missing from a compound modifier, the patient's not going to die. I understand. But at the time that this exam was written, those were some of the things that were being tested on. We are getting towards the tail end of writing the book style 4th edition. And so the tests at a later date are going to be revised and some of these things changed, but that's not going to be for some time. So if you're planning to take the exam in the next year, you're graduating in the next year or so, you're not going to have to worry about that next edition. You're going to want to keep studying the Book of Style 3rd edition, and we'll put out tons of information when that 4th edition is going to be available, and all the trickle down prep product and everything about those exams and such at a later date, but that's not anything you guys need to worry about anytime soon. Numbers, Roman versus Arabic, make sure that you're paying attention to that in the Book of Style. A lot of those things pertain to the classifications as well. And then not reading and following instructions. Every section of every single question, in fact, on the transcription against audio repeats the instructions about what to do on that question. Every question repeats it. So there should be no reason to do something wrong in those sections. So make sure that you're following the instructions really well. Next. Okay, invest in yourself. AHDI offers free, due to our, what am I trying to think of here? Our Building Futures sponsorship program, of which you can see CanScribe College is a top tier sponsor of. Students do not pay a membership fee for joining AHDI. Next. So there really is no excuse to not join your professional association because you're not going to be charged any money. So to navigate to that, this is a snapshot of our website here. You can see that you would simply navigate to get involved under that. You can go to access your benefits, or you can just go to that first tier, even the Join AHDI, and click on that page, and it's going to take you, there's all the different types of, as you can see there, the student membership, and you'll be able to just follow along the instructions easily for setting up an account and joining AHDI. It's super easy, and there's a ton of information. Next. I'm not going to read through all of these. You can do that on your own, or by, browsing the HDI website later, but there are tons of benefits to being a member, and especially for students, because as you're going to see on the next slide, these are a bunch of the resources that we recommend. You certainly don't need all of these to take the RHDS exam. If I were going to pick 3, I would say the RMT exam guide and CD, which comes as a bundle. You don't have to purchase it separately. And then the Book of Style 3rd edition, which you probably already have for your school. And the Book of Style workbook, if you feel like you really do need or want to test yourself on the Book of Style standards, that is a good book to have, the workbook.
I have that, and I can attest to that. It's excellent.
It is, yeah. The RMT exam guide and CD, those are the ones that I was speaking of earlier that provide great information about every single objective that's listed on the RHDS RHDS exam, extra resources, tons of sample questions. It even at the end has a practice exam, a written practice exam. So it's a great resource as well.
Awesome. Next.
And of course, with all of those resources, when you do become a student member of HDI, you get the HDI discounted rate. So you're not paying full price for them. You're getting that, the benefit. That's one of the benefits, is getting resources at a reduced cost. Okay, so these are some more resources that we offer for exam takers, our HDS study course. There are some different specialty courses in here, acute care courses and whatnot. When you go to the website, you're going to see all of them listed, and there are monthly courses. You get several weeks to study. All the information is provided for you. There's resources that are suggested, and they really are good study courses. They can be very beneficial. Okay, some other benefits of being a member is that, and especially when you're preparing to take your RHDS exam, is the fact that we have OWLS Academy. Now, your instructor, Audrey, has contributed greatly to this program, so you probably are going to be able to tell already that it is a fantastic program. It is a resource that is provided to members only, so although you may see it there on the drop-down menu on that slide there, OWLS Academy, to go to, if you're not logged in as an HDI member, you're not going to be able to access it. It's going to take you to a login page and ask you to log in. So if you go to the next slide, this is a snapshot of the OWLS Academy landing page. We have our little mascot there, Albert, the Audie Owl. And each of those words in green is hyperlinked to the respective dedicated web page that houses the information and activities that are listed under each of these items. So if you want to read about the student who's being spotlighted, or find out information about volunteering or recognition, you're going to click on that Observe button. If you're close to finishing your transcription program, or simply trying to get ahead of the game and being prepared for what's ahead, you want to click on the Work tab, or the Work button there, to access new hire prep tests and other career-related resources. The Learn page has a multitude of both fun and challenging activities. And last but certainly not least, the Succeed page provides wonderful information, lots of tips and resources about becoming a credentialed professional. Of course, that's what we're talking about today with the RHDS exam. And then you'll notice at the bottom there, there's a blue button for webinar recordings. This page goes to the student webinar library, which is exclusive for student members, although every HDI category, whether you're an individual professional, whether you're an instructor, whether you're a corporate member or an educator, all members have access to OWLS Academy, but only students have access to that webinar recordings section. So that's something you're going to want to take advantage of. We update recordings in there every 6 months. A couple of examples of the recordings that are in there currently are Credentialing Exam Test Taking Strategies for Success. That was a fantastic webinar done by Buffy Williams. And then Speed Typing from a Student Perspective, which is a great webinar that gives a lot of tips for using word expansion software. And then there's some other webinars in there too. I just wanted to mention a couple of good ones. Okay, so these are just a few of the other resources that you're going to see. This is sort of a zoomed in look at the work page of OWLS Academy. I'm sure you saw there the acronym OWLS stands for Observe, Work, Learn, and Succeed. So the next couple of pages are just a little bit more honed in on some of the resources that we provide when you're looking to take a to look for a job. There's new hire test preps. These are fantastic. Audrey, I believe you helped with a lot of these too. So they're really fantastic quizzes. I believe they have 75 questions each, and there are 3 different quizzes that you can take to sort of test your knowledge and help yourself prepare for exams. You can even do these before taking the RHDS just to have some extra exposure to questions and test your knowledge. Next. Okay, you can go ahead and move on. This is just another example of the Learn, what you see on the Learn page. So here's just a snapshot of the cost of exams in case you're wondering. All of this information, of course, is on the website. But I just wanted to, have a quick view here of how you can see, you can really save some money by becoming an HDI member on the exams. The resources and exams, it's really a great deal, if you ask me.
Definitely. Wow. Okay. Whoops.
CHDS is included there, and then the next slide is just the cost of the CQE, which again isn't really relevant to y'all right now. Since you're just starting out, you'd be more interested in the RHDS. So moving on, I've provided some more links. These are direct links to the HDI website, to certification, and then to download the Credentialing Candidate Guide. That's the big one I keep mentioning. Tons of information. Next.
Should I go on? Okay.
Yep. So, just as you will prepare your resume to send to potential employers, you want to make sure that you're preparing yourself for conquering the RHDS exam. Again, it is very nice to see those 4 little letters after your name, and you'll be really glad that you did take it.
Definitely.
Okay, so if we have time for questions, I can definitely stay on if there are any. Sure, yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. I think a couple people left. Let me just scroll up here. I'm not seeing very many. Does anybody have any questions for Kristin? That's unusual. It seems like it's the chat is working.
It was a lot that I crammed in there.
Oh, here we go. Okay. How many times can you take the test? Good question.
Let's see. I think we did put a limit on that of 3 times. Gosh,
In
I'm
a
trying to
year,
think.
right?
Yes, in a year, yes.
Yeah.
You can take it as many times as you need to pass, although we've really not had people have to take it
Right.
several times. But yeah.
And I will mention that actually CanScribe has a huge success rate from what I've heard. That the program is so hard that people do really well on it because they've learned so much.
That's
So
great.
I think that's excellent. And with the materials that Kristin has talked about, there's just no way you couldn't pass it.
Right.
And
And we do
Priya,
also,
go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say, we do also, when you become a member of HDI, yet another benefit is that we offer online forums. You can go out there and ask questions. We even have a direct email address, which actually, if you move to the next slide, or when you have a chance to show that, it's got our professional practices email address there. Those
Cool.
questions come to me as well as my email address. So prior to taking your exam while you're studying, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me, email Tina, or to check out those forums. There's some Q&A that's already out there, but just really there's so many resources available to you.
And that is one thing, Kristin usually does it, I believe, the clinical medicine forum.
Mm-hmm.
You can go on there and ask all kinds of questions and get wonderful answers. So don't, be a stranger. And Priya is asking, she's only in week 3, should she sign up for AHDI already? I definitely would, Priya, because you can just build on your fund of knowledge as you go along. So I think
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. And you are eligible to be a student member of HDI for 2 years. I think most programs, I don't know what CanScribes is, but most programs that teach transcription are generally 2 years or less. So we do allow that.
Awesome.
And then we do have a postgraduate category, which is, it's not the same price as a individual professional membership. It still is a reduced cost for postgraduates, but it's not free like the student. But you can be a student member for 2 years.
Awesome. And the other thing too, we didn't touch on a lot of, but the Plexus magazine, even as a student member, you can go in and review those magazines online. And they have tons of activities, well, not tons, but several activities each edition, but they also offer lots and lots of information on medical conditions, things in the industry. And for those of us who are CHDS, we can even get some of our credits from those. So, because we do continuing educational credits. So, it's just building your knowledge base. And I can never stress that enough. Every day is a new day in the neighborhood, so to speak, as my husband says. But the more we know, the better we are. And we just become better and better just by exposing ourselves to more things. So
Yes, absolutely. And thanks for mentioning Plexus. That it's a great magazine. It's online. When you become a member, you can access the archives and read any of those old issues. There is a combination of industry topics as well as professional topics and clinical medicine. And we even have a dedicated student column and student activities. And a lot of those resources that are in Al's Academy sort of piggyback on items from Plexus. So
right.
it's a lot of great information.
Totally. So I guess we should wrap it up for now, but I can't thank you enough, Kristin, for your patience with us today and for continuing on. I hope you folks enjoyed it as much as I do, and I did. But do have a great rest of your day, and this will be posted up, hopefully, probably by tomorrow morning, along with the PDF, so you guys can read anything you'd like, more about the links and all that. I do encourage everybody to go on and get your credential. I think it's vital in this, healthcare industry these days, and it will boost your confidence. I think it's a wonderful ego boost just to see those letters behind your name. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
it proves who you are. Anyway, thank you, Kristin, and have a wonderful day, everybody.
You're very welcome, and thanks again for having me. I enjoyed it. Good
Thanks,
luck, everyone.
Kristin. Bye.
Bye.